أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. We started our journey about talking about the wudda that exists within us, this deep-rooted love. Yesterday we mentioned one little aspect of wudda, the difference between it and hub. Wudda was the love that found its way to action. So this deep meaning is within our hearts, that finds its way towards actions. It serves as a thing that gives nutrients to this tree that we have, that allows them, the root belief system, to yield in fruits in the 24 hours of man. We said we have to make sure we have a real tree. We have to make sure that this tree is not hollow from within. And then we went forward and said, well, what can make a tree hollow? Well, it's termites. We went forward and saw exactly what these termites were. They were waswas. These were non-divine whispers. We explained the idea of the two landing strips that assist in allowing either a divine inspiration from coming into your heart or the non-divine whisper. The divine inspiration being the help of Allah, and the non-divine whisper, the waswas, being the infestation of shaitan himself. Be it the shaitan from outside or the shaitan from within. I also sincerely thank you guys for putting up with me. Alhamdulillah, I have been sick for the past few days and I've been pausing to make sure I don't cough, but unfortunately the sickness has gotten a little bit worse. So you might have to recite some salawats today. We said the effects of waswas was seen in action, in relationships that man had, and in the root belief system. Okay. We said that waswas comes, it deforms how man understands the root belief system, right? And when it deforms it, what does it do? It first separates in my understanding the guide from guiding, and hence nullifies the guide in guiding. When somebody is affected with waswas, then this particular person, if it finds its way in its root belief system, they don't see the unity between the deen and the divine wali. The deen is no longer seen as the embodiment of the divine wali. And the divine wali is not seen as the embodiment of the deen. While this tree seems normal, it's actually slowly becoming hollow from the insides. We continued further and we said we're going to explicitly talk about contemporary areas where waswas affects. We said just like how the divine wilaya is not apolitical, the deen cannot be apolitical. We also gave the other extreme. Just like how the divine wilaya does not have weak political stances, the deen therefore does not have weak political stances within it. We went further than that. We said, we started to talk about the idea of shifa'ah. We said, it's not a thing which pushes man to inaction, rather it's the motivation for action. It pushes the man to grab onto the rope, the deen of Allah, and act on it. And in doing so, man climbs out of the well, the well of sin. When man acts on the deen, he has now grabbed onto the hand of Allah himself. He's now grabbed onto this shafa'ah. He's now holding on to the wali himself. Now he's assisting the imam in leading him to the right destination. That was the right role of divine wilaya. It was to lead man to the right destination, which was a return to the origin, a return to Tawheed, a return towards Allah. The recap ends here. Now we're going to deepen some of the things that we've said, because we've laid some tools for it already. Salawat, please. So in fact, now man, once he's holding on to the deen of Allah, he's taking himself out of Allahumma al'anuhum jami'a. See, in Ziyarat Ashura, we give the la'an before the salam. Okay? There's a reasoning behind that. And the explicit words that are used in the la'an itself holds guidance for us. It's not just a tool to get an emotion out. No, that word itself is sourced in the divine wali, and hence is supposed to help us in coming out of the well of sin. What do we say in the la'an? We say, Allahumma al'an awwala zalimin zalama haqqa Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. What's their haqq? Their haqq is that they should be followed. The haqq of the divine wali is that he should be listened to. That's the haqq of the divine wali. So now, any enemy, be it myself, if I'm assisting the divine wali in helping me come out of this well of sin, then I've given the haqq to him. And if I'm not, then I've taken his haqq away from him. What do we say after that? This is why we further write the lines after. We say what? وَآخِرَ تَابِئٍ لَهُ عَلَى ذَلِكَ. And the last person to follow in what? The taking of the haqq of the divine wali. What's the haqq of the divine wali? It is that he must be followed. If Yazid just came and said to Abu Abdullah that I really like you, and continued doing what he was doing, is Abu Abdullah going to be happy with that? Would he say, okay, yeah, now the problem's solved? What was the haqq that was not given to Al Muhammad? It was the haqq of obedience. So in Ziyarat Ashura, when we're distancing ourselves from those who oppressed, in fact, we're distancing ourselves from those who didn't give the haqq to this divine wali. Anybody who stops and gets in the way of Abu Abdullah, anybody who prevents him from doing his job. What was his job? The job of the divine wali was to take me to the right destination. What was the right destination? It was return to the origin. Return to Tawheed. Now any person, anything, any company, any video, any time, any instrument, any pleasure, any relationship that gets in the way of Abu Abdullah, that's the enemy. Okay, so now once you have decided that you're going to help Abu Abdullah in his cause, you're going to hold on to the rope of Allah, you're going to hold on to the deen of Allah, you're going to hold on to the wilayah of Allah, you're going to hold on to Abu Abdullah. There was unity between these. What happens now? Well, now you're allowed to say salam to him. How do you say salam to him? The next portion, the ziyarah says what? Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Just him? No. وَعَلَى الْأَرْوَاحِ الَّتِي حَلَّتْ بِفَنَائِكَ. Now, you're saying salam to Abu Abdullah, not just him, all those who dissolve themselves in him. All those that had become that sign that just pointed towards the meaning. All those that had given up everything they had and held on to only one thing and nothing else in their 24 hours. They held on to the deen of Allah. What does salam mean? The literal translation goes like, what we understand it to be is salam alaikum, like peace be upon you. Actually, we're saying with dua, we're saying that you're making a claim there as well, actually. We're saying that you, the person I'm saying salam to, is at peace from me. So much so, I'm even doing a dua for that for you. Now that you've said in your actions that you're going to help Abu Abdullah and pulling you out of the well of sin, now you can truly connect with the meaning of the salam on him. Now the relationship between you and that salam becomes a real one, not an arbitrary one. Now it's not read like the newspaper is. Now you're finally building that bookshelf that we talked about. Salawat, please. There are two areas that we fall short in giving the haqq to the divine wali, due to termites, really, due to waswas. Again, we're dealing with contemporary examples. I really appreciate the people who have reached out via the QR codes. It helps me explicitly pick examples and talk about them. The two areas that we typically neglect the divine wali is what? What was his job? His job was to take me to the right destination, which was return to the origin, which is Tawheed itself, which is Allah Himself. To take me towards Allah. How does He take me? What are the tools that the divine wali has used to take me towards Allah? Well, one, it's the words that he says. And number two, it's the habits that he tries to inculcate in society. These are the two things that we'll stick to in today's lecture and the next one coming, inshallah. Okay. When the divine wali, out of his purity, becomes the recipient of the Quran, waswas comes and deludes man into understanding what the meaning of that particular word is. In the Quran, in Surah Fat, verse number 10, there's a portion that says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Yadullah fawqa aydihim. Al-ayah. Ayah continues. There's ayah before this as well. It says, the hand of his Allah is above the other hands, their hands. Okay. The same people who had an issue with Tawheed and Tawassul, they come and look at this particular word, and instead of understanding it as guidance towards the right destination, they understand it in an imbalanced way. They say, look, Allah has a hand. Look, the wali is telling us, Allah has a hand. They start to believe that this particular belief of theirs, stemming from their imbalanced understanding of what the divine wali is saying, and it leads to a lot of problems. In some ways, this is still a better imbalance than the scenario I'm about to share with you. At least there's explicit mention of a hand there. The mistake they've done is they haven't seen the whole picture. Allah in the same book also says, لَيْثَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. There is no one else like him. They haven't taken the contextual meaning in mind when they were understanding the textual meaning. Okay. But let's look at our own selves. Let's look at the imbalance in our own houses. Here's a hadith by the Nabi, goes like this. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله إنما مثل المرأة مثل الضلع المعوج. The example of a woman is like that of a bent rib. The hadith continues. إن تركته أنفعت به. If you leave her be, you will benefit by her. You will benefit by means of her. وَإِنْ أَقَمْتَهُ كَسَرْتَ. And if you try to straighten her, you'll break her. Here's how some people afflicted with waswas in their root belief system, in their divine wilayah, see this hadith. They think the Nabi of Allah, na'udhu billah, is putting down women. What was the job of the Nabi of Allah? It was to lead us to the right destination. What was the right destination? It was a return to the origin. It was to take us towards Allah. It was to take us towards Tawheed. It was not to categorically put down the creatures of Allah. What happens when they start to see this and other ahadiths like this? Their understanding is kind of imbalanced regarding it. What happens? Well, they start to develop a perspective in themselves. They said, look, the Nabi of Allah, he's putting women down. Na'udhu billah. They continue, and now fathers start to put down mothers in front of kids. Fathers start to put down mothers in front of kids. What does that do? It's a transgression of the rights of the kid. It's a transgression of the rights of the mother. I mentioned the kids first, on purpose. We're just going to analyze the kids for now. Salawat, please. What are the effects? What happens when you transgress the right of a child? What happens when waswas comes and causes an imbalance in your understanding of the position of a woman in the deen? Well, you're inculcating a culture in the child now. It affects men and women differently. So you're inculcating in the sons a deep-rooted disrespect for womanhood. In their fundamental phases, when they're learning respect, when they're learning adab, the ahadith tell us, from this age to this age, your job is to teach them adab. Why? Because me as God has made sure this child is a sponge at this particular age. I've made sure the ground is ready, now I'm commanding you to do your job. When that time hits, I'm inculcating a particular ideology in my child that, I'm even referring it to the Nabi of God. Sometimes I might even say these ahadiths as a put down. God forbid. So, a deep-rooted disrespect for women does what? You have basically given your son the tools for a very good divorce before he's even gotten married. How does it affect the daughter? She says, my father seems to hate women. Wait a second, who else is a woman? Ah. Once she starts to see that there is no respect for my person in my household, the very person I was supposed to seek protection and comfort from is putting down me, either directly or indirectly. The one who was supposed to be a guardian by his own self takes him and nullifies his position. Once that happens, you got a whole lot of problems in society. Salawat, and we're going to go towards the next portion, please. Rasat, salawat, please. Okay, so what's the right way of understanding this hadith? The hadith exists. Remember, waswas does what? Waswas does what? Waswas separates the three roots, the three-root belief system. It prevents you from seeing the actual purpose of the divine wali. It makes sure that the divine wali can't do that which he was supposed to do. It brings an imbalance to your understanding of the divine walaya. What's the right way of understanding the hadith? It's not a put down at all. See, there are many things in this world that are bent. There are many things in this world that are bent. The Holy Prophet could have used those things if he wanted to put them down and say, these women, na'udhu billah, are bent. They're kaj. Na'udhu billah. He uses a particular example. What did he analyze them to? What did he say that they're like? The rib. How important is your rib to your body? Would any sane man try to straighten his rib? It's not a put down at all. What does the rib do? It protects your very vital organs. One of them what? Your heart. What is the heart known for as a human symbol that transcends civilization and time? The heart is a symbol of love. The rib protects the heart. The divine wali is giving guidance to the man and saying, listen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the fitrah, the type of creation for all His creatures in accordance to the role that they have to play, the role that He wants them to play. The divine wali is not putting the women down, rather he's explaining to the man how important of a position this person plays. There's more depth here. if you try to imbalance and if you try to understand this hadith in an imbalanced way, if you try to quote unquote straighten the rib, if you try to tell women to go against their fitrah, okay, what happens? The Prophet tells you that if you try to straighten the rib, what happens? It'll break. A lot of things break. Glass breaks, wooden sticks break. Why did the Holy Prophet choose this analogy? The words of the Holy Prophet are critical. Everything is explicit. Everything is intended. They're not haphazard words. What happens when a rib breaks? Something that is an essential part of your life, breathing itself becomes hard. If the rib breaks bad enough, it can even damage the heart itself. Doing the very basic tasks of the human body becomes excruciatingly painful. The Holy Prophet is warning man. Listen, I know waswas will come after you. I know that if I leave you alone, this issue will arrive. I'm giving you guidance, you as man. Don't try to change her fitrah. Allah does not make a mistake, na'udhu billah. He's created you in pairs. Just as important as your role is in the household, so is her role. Salawat, please. The broken rib then, for the difficulties that it causes, is less, underline the word less to blame than the fool who breaks it. So waswas does what? It comes and it causes an imbalance in man. What's the imbalance? It prevents man from letting the divine wali do his job. The divine wali now cannot guide man to the right destination. He cannot take man towards the origin. And any person who prevents the divine wali from who doing his job, any person who gets in the way of Abu Abdullah is what? He's the enemy. Be it myself. We've covered one thing. We've covered two examples of areas where words of the divine wali and the words that he represents and brings are understood in an imbalanced way. There was the example of a certain sect in Mecca, Medina, when we go for ziyarah, where they believe Allah to have a hand. They don't look at the contextual evidence to go towards a correct textual understanding. In a very similar manner, we saw the problem at home as well. There are hadiths out there that, if not explained properly, can lead to an imbalanced explanation of the deen. It could lead to a person thinking that they're standing by their Mawla, while in fact they are nullifying his efforts. Let's look at the second thing. Aside from words, what was the thing that our Mawla did to take us to the right destination? There were some habits, some traditions that he inculcated in society. Think of two main pillars of the Shia madhab. Two absolute pivotal things that every single Imam inculcated in the Shias. One is the tent of Abu Abdullah, the Aza of Abu Abdullah, and second is the intizar of the Zuhur. Salawat, please. So this is why. So this is why today's topic and tomorrow's topic, inshallah, will be covering these two essential habits, these two essential traditions, these two essential sunnah that the divine wali has inculcated in the Shias. What was waswas? What does it do? It prevented us from letting the divine wali do their job. What was the job of the divine wali? I keep repeating this because this is essential. This is the very thing that exists right before our eyes, and waswas comes and makes me ignore it. The divine wali, his job was to take me to the right destination, which was towards Tawheed, towards Allah, towards the origin. Okay. So now in his words were used for the same thing. What do you think these two habits are supposed to pull us towards? Now answer this question. You have the tools to answer it. Why did every single Imam push for the Aza of Imam Hussain alayhi salam? Even before Karbala itself, we have narrations from the Ahlul Bayt. The very time of birth of Abu Abdullah is used as the mention of Karbala. Why? What was the job of the divine wali? It was to take me to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From the time of the Holy Prophet, the mention of the 12th Imam is there. Why? It was to take me to the origin, Tawheed. Let's open one of them today at least. Salawat, please. We said in the beginning, the first thing we opened the speeches with was what? What brought us to the tent of Abu Abdullah? It was the wudda, the deep love that we have of Abu Abdullah. It was sourced where? It was sourced in the Iman, and it was sourced in the Amal Salih of Abu Abdullah himself. Okay? This wudda is what brought us to this particular tent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had already put something deep within the hearts of the believer, that no matter how low he falls in the pit of sin, the rope of Allah is there with him. You will have people who year in, year out care nothing for hijab, care nothing for the sharia, care nothing for other things. When the moon of Muharram comes, this wudda starts to play its role. A person can't bear to not be in the tent of Abu Abdullah. Well, the person finds himself now in the tent. He comes towards the remembrance of Abu Abdullah. What happens here? Well, they learn that in fact there's unity between the divine wali and the sharia he preaches. They learn here that in fact one is the same as the other. One is the embodiment of the other. You can't have one without the other. They're given the conceptual tools now to renew their pledge of allegiance, their bay'ah to Abu Abdullah himself. They can now truly, when on the day of Ashura, Ziyarat Ashura is recited, do the la'an with meaning. They can now come forth and they say, Abu Abdullah, I will not let any enemy, be it even myself, get in your way. You have to do your job, and that is the islah of the ummah, which is me and you, of your Jad, the Holy Prophet of Islam. Salawat, please. So this renewal of the pledge of allegiance takes place every year. This renewal of the pledge of allegiance takes place every year. It's an immense assistance to the believer in helping his Mawla, and not being a hindrance to his Mawla. Well, it should also push a person to understand what Karbala is as well, the thing they've come to remember. Karbala, it was the greatest zikr of the greatest victory in Jihadul Akbar. Before it was a victory in Jihadul Asghar, Karbala is the apex, it's the peak of victory in Jihadul Akbar. What was the Jihadul Akbar? It was the jihad with the nafs itself. It was holding on to the deen of Allah. It was holding on to the hand of Allah, no matter what hardships were placed before man. That is the memory we've come to commemorate. Where individuals gathered on a field and said, we will not let go of the hand of Allah. It doesn't matter how many come before us. It doesn't matter they throw the hardships of this dunya at us. It doesn't matter they throw words at us. They throw thirst at us. Or they throw spears at us. It doesn't matter. They took a stand and they said, Ya Abu Abdullah, no matter what, no matter what difficulty I will find myself in, I will assist you in your goal. I will make sure that divine wali takes the ummah, which is me and you, to the right destination, which is the return to the origin. It's the return to Tawheed. So now what happens? Well, now if I'm somebody who's understood this, and I'm a participant in this tent of Abu Abdullah, I'm coming to the majlis of Abu Abdullah, I'm no longer coming because this is just my Husainiya or my center or my friend's majlis or someone else's majlis. I am not an imbalanced person when it comes to coming here. I'm not coming here because my friends come here. I'm not coming here to see my relatives. All of those things could be true. But the actual purpose of me coming here is now clear as day for me. It is for me to now come and assist Aba Abdullah. In what? In pulling me out of the well of sin. I have a very personal connection to the tent now. If I am somebody who's helping facilitate these environments, if I am an EC member, a youth volunteer, if I'm somebody who's even helping pick up the shoes of the Azadar of Aba Abdullah, I don't let that be a deterrent from the actual goal. Now, I don't have an imbalance towards that role. My shoulders don't puff up now. I embody that which I'm preaching. And in embodying that which I'm preaching, I'm developing now a real connection with the tent of Aba Abdullah. Now I'm a true facilitator of the Azza of Aba Abdullah. I'm not an arbitrary one. But what changes? The very practices that are conducted in the majlis change. The very words that are said in the majlis now change. They're no longer to garner a wahwa or a yali or a salawat or. The very words themselves change. The words are now there to help the divine wali. In doing what? In leading the ummah to the right destination. Which is what? The return to the origin. The return towards Allah Jalla Jalaluhu wa Azama Sha'nuh. Salawat, please. What else happens? Well, now I can answer one very simple understanding. Why is it the Ahlul Bayt have told us cry for Aba Abdullah? Shed tears. Not only shed tears, if you can't shed tears, pretend to shed tears. Who are we pretending for? Are we pretending for the guy beside us? Na'udhu billah? No. We're displaying to the wali of Allah, the true owner of the tent. We're saying, even if I might be infected with termites, even if the sins don't allow tears to flow for me, O Aba Abdullah, you are the embodiment of the rahmah of Allah. Your apex traits were not that you threw a door or killed many people. Your apex trait that you were the embodiment of the attributes of Allah. O Aba Abdullah, see me in this particular position now and help me climb out of the well. That's the purpose of the tears that we shed. The tears themselves are assistance for the Mawla in doing his job. But tonight, we're gathered to talk about one particular individual. This particular person is absolutely dissolved in his Mawla. He's fani. He's just like the sign that does nothing but point towards the meaning. So much so that even the mention of his name cannot happen without the minds going towards his brother. Even his grave becomes a symbol and a pointer towards the grave of his master. He becomes the gateway itself towards receiving the mercy of Aba Abdullah. Tonight is the night of the gateway of Allah's mercy. Tonight is the night of our Mawla Abul Fadl al-Abbas. You see, Abul Fadl al-Abbas was called the Qamar of the Bani Hashim. Any light that the moon has is nothing but the reflection of the light of his Mawla. Any beauty, any perfection Abul Fazl has is nothing but displaying his absolute love of his Mawla. The actual attributes of his Mawla are displayed in him. That's how close he was to his Mawla. Not just that. You see, Aba Abdullah is a divine wali. When he says a word, it's not emotional only. When he sees his brother fall and he says, my back is broken, the proximity of Abbas to his brother Hussain was so much that even the pain felt by one is experienced by the other. It's not mere words that are recited. It's an explanation of an existential link. Now when Abul Fazl Abbas comes to Abu Abdullah and asks to go, Abu Abdullah is telling Abul Fazl Abbas, Abbas, how can I let you go? I will feel every sword and every arrow that they throw. Abbas, when I start to feel the loss of all those whom these wolves have slain, I look to your stature, I look to your face, O Ghadhanfar, O the lion, O Ghadhanfar, I tell myself, at least my Abbas remains. Now Abu Abdullah gives permission to Abul Fadl Abbas to go bring the water to the tent of Abu Abdullah. Abul Fadl rides out and he's fighting the enemies. This lion of Allah, the manifestation of the might of his Mawla, goes out and he's fighting the enemy. Now some have tasted his sword in Siffin. They've seen how they weren't able to distinguish between him and Ali ibn Abi Talib in Siffin. Perhaps a brother of theirs was killed there. Now they have a grudge. They want to take their grudge out on our Mawla. Abul Fazl Abbas calls out to the enemy. He sees the Imam of his time as the Deen of Allah. He says what? Look what he says. Learn from him. He says, Inni uhami abadan an dini. He says, I will support the Deen of Allah. Nothing will remain my way in supporting the Deen of Allah. He continues, Inni uhami abadan an dini an imamin sadiqin yaqini. He says that I see the Deen of Allah as unified with my Mawla, and nothing, no arrows and no army will get in my way. My existence is nothing but for the assistance of the Deen, is nothing but for the assistance of my Mawla. Recite with me please. As-salamu على الحسين
وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب Hussein. Whose night is it? We've arrived at the night of the flag bearer, the whole army of Hussein. A moment comes on the Asr of Ashura, from morning till now. If anyone says that Hussein is not the vast mercy of Allah, let me show you. From the morning till now, Abu Abdullah is speaking to the enemies. He's reminding them of their letters. He's reminding them of his lineage. Hussein, these men have already killed your ashab. These men have already killed your children and your nephews. Why do you keep calling them towards you? This is Rahmatullah al-Wasi'ah. No matter what they've done, he still calls on them. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas has now come to seek permission. Hussein says, Abbas, first go and speak to them. It's better that you invite them and then go out to fight them. This is our Mawla Hussein. But when Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas returns to tell Hussein that they're not listening, فَسَمِعَ الْأَطْفَالَ يُنَادُونَ الْعَطَاشَ الْعَطَاش. On the 7th he was moved from Furat. On the 7th, on the 8th, on the 9th, it's possible there's water in the tents. But on the 10th of Muharram, there's no water that remains. The Maqatil don't say the children approached Abbas. It says, فَسَمِعَ الْأَطْفَالِ يُنَادُونَ. Abbas can hear from the tents, they're yelling, they're screaming, the thirst is killing us. Abu Abdullah says, Ya Abbas, oh my brother, go bring some water for these children. We saw in one place Sakina herself brings the water back for her uncle. When the uncle goes to bring something for his nephews and nieces, there is immense hope in their uncle. Uncle doesn't come back empty-handed. At least not when my uncle is Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. They say Abbas reaches the Furat. These enemies who are in front of him are the enemies of Siffin. These are the enemies of Jamal. These are the ones that betrayed Imam al-Mujtaba. But one by one, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas manages to scare them away. When he arrives at the water, I know the Maqatil say, فَذَكَّرَ عَتَشَ الْحُسَيْنِ. In the Maqatil it's narrated, Abbas remembered Hussein. I say he never forgot. When he put his hands into the water and he brought them up to his lips, he began speaking to himself. He says, Ya nafs min ba'd al-Husayn huni wa ba'dahu كنت أن تكوني. هذا الحسين شارب المنون وتشربين الماء بارد المعاني. He says, Abbas, if Hussein is thirsty. How dare you attempt to bring water to your lips? He says, my lips won't touch water so long as yours are dry. In my head all I hear are your young daughters' cries. How can I drink before my beloved master? If Hussein falls, then why should Abbas live after? He fills up the qirba, he fills up the water bag. The Muqatil narrate, Abbas doesn't look right, he doesn't look left, he's looking at the khaymagan. He knows his Sakina is waiting, his master is waiting. Abbas has wafa, Abbas has loyalty. If he told Sakina, I'm coming back, he's coming back. These Malounin can't face our warrior one by one. All of a sudden chivalry goes out the door. Before the deal was one-on-one. Now from every angle the enemies of Allah have surrounded our lion. The cowards are hiding behind the trees. That Mal'oon struck our hero Abbas on his right arm. He's not deterred. He tells himself, he speaks with himself, Wallahi qata'tu yamini inni uhami abadan an dini wa an imam as-sadiq al-yaqini. He says to himself, by Allah, even if they cut my right arm, this man is the embodiment of the deen of Allah. You can take my right, I will not separate from my Mawla Hussain. But the cowards are still hiding behind the trees. La ilaha illallah. They sever his left. Ya nafs, la takhshi min al-kuffari وَأَبْشِرِي بِرَحْمَةِ الْجَبَّارِينَ. He says, Abbas, don't fear the enemies. Very soon you're going to meet Rasulullah. But before you arrive at Kawthar, first quench the thirst of your nieces. My sisters, my brothers, if you've been to Karbala and you've seen the haram of Abbas, the haram is here. The maqam of his right arm is there. The maqam of his left arm is over there. Do you know what this means? A moment comes now. If Abbas had kept going, then you would first see his left arm, then his right arm, then you would see the body. But at this moment, an arrow strikes the mashk of Abbas, and the water and his hope spill out of the bag. At this moment, our warrior turns around. Abbas, at least get back to safety. No, I told Sakina I'm coming back with water. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas turns around to go back towards Furat. Now the enemies from Siffin have surrounded him. Still Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas only recites poetry. He's speaking to himself. He says, Ya nafs min ba'd al-Hussain, Ya nafs la takhshi min al-kuffar. Not once does he call out to his Mawla Hussain. All of a sudden the Mal'oon comes from behind and strikes him over the head. another mal'oon comes from the front and fires an arrow towards his eye. For that arrow-stricken eye, how many of our eyes became furat? Our warrior only spoke to himself, but when he fell from the horse, wasaha, he yelled out, Ya akhi, adrikni. Abu Abdullah came towards his brother. He put the head of Abbas in his lap. I wonder, Hussein, when you saw this body, did you think, how can a man with no arms fall from a horse? La ilaha illallah. I don't want to keep you, this musibah is heavy. Hussein, you came back from the river looking like your mother. The tents are still not on fire, but your back looks like hers. Al-an inkasara dhahri. Now my back is broken. Some of the maqatil say when Abu Abdullah returned, he informed the children. Other maqatil say the first thing that Hussein did, he went to the tent of Abbas and he brought down the pole. If someone's tent comes down, it means they don't need their tent anymore. The calls can be heard, Wa Aliyah, Wa Abbas, Zainab, get ready for Sham. Your brother is not returning. Now that we've recited the musibah of Babul Hawa'ij, I want to do tawassul to my Mawlaya. Saqaya dasht Karbala, Abal Fazl, Abal Fazl, Abal Fazl. Saqaya dasht Karbala, Abal Fazl, Abal Fazl, Abal Fazl. Dastat shode az tan juda, Abal Fazl, Abal Fazl, Abal Fazl. Rahim Allah man nada ya Hussein.